A group of friends took a boat to an island to celebrate the 4th of July. Hours later, the boat came back. Nolan's phone came back. His car keys came back. His friends made it home. But 18 years old Nolan Xavier Wells did not. Nearly 2 days later, a park ranger found Nolan's body in the water near the island, close to where he was last seen. At first, people thought that he drowned. His family feared something else had happened. And right now, one question is still sitting heavy on our minds. It's still sitting heavy on the entire community. And that question is, what happened to Nolan Wells? Was this a tragic accident? Was it alcohol caused or rough water induced, or a decision to stay on the island? Or did something happen to him before he even entered the water? And if nobody has the full answer yet, why did the people investigating his passing sound so sure so early? Now, this is not only a story about a mysterious passing, it is a story about friendship, it is a story about responsibility, racial mistrust, and online trust, or the online noise, and a mother who refuses to accept an answer that has not been backed by evidence. Welcome to Yes Life Coaching. My name is Femi. Here, we don't just repeat trending stories, not at all. We look at the facts, we look at how it affects us, and all of that. So, welcome to Yes Life Coaching.
Starting now, stand in your power. Let the world see how. Stand in your power, stand in your power now. Turn up your voice, your truth, your wow. Stand in your power, is your channel.
So now, before we begin, I just want to say a few things. This is still an active investigation. No one has been arrested. Nolan's friends have not been publicly named. The cause of the passing is still undetermined. The manner of his passing is still undetermined. And everything I'm about to share with you is based on publicly available information as of July 27th, which was yesterday. So take a breather with me and let's begin. Before Nolan became the center of a national mystery, he was a son. He was a brother. He was a friend. He was a student. He was an athlete, a young man with plans. Nolan was born on August 19, 2007. He was such a young child. He grew up in Ocean Springs, Mississippi. He graduated from Ocean Springs High School in 2025. Last year, he played multiple sports. His coaches described him as hardworking. They described him as humble and respectful. They described him as a kind of man who led with his character, not just his talent. He continued football at South Mississippi Community College. He is 6'1". He weighs 185 pounds. He was a wide receiver. He was a number 16. He was studying general business and heading into his second year of college. His mother, Christine Wansley, and his father, Elmer Wansley, have described him as loving. They've described him as kind. They described him as family oriented. And I need us to hold on to all of those descriptions, because when a case turns into arguments, theories, and we have comment section wars, the person at the center can disappear under the noise. I want us to realize that Nolan was not a hashtag. No, he was not just the boy in the island. He was an 18-year-old who left home with the expectation of coming back. On Friday, July 3rd, Nolan cooked dinner for his parents. He did this before he left to spend the night with his friends. Nolan, he hugged his mother. He kissed her. He told her he loved her. There was no big argument. There was no warning sign. No reason for his parents to believe that that particular goodbye will be different from all the others goodbye. No reason for them to believe that that particular goodbye was the last goodbye. Nolan was supposed to spend the night with his friends, then join the friends the next morning for a 4th of July trip to On Island. Again, for his parents, it was an ordinary goodbye, but it became the last time that Christine saw her son alive. If you're a parent, I want you to sit with that for a while. Ordinary moments can become sacred in ways that we never ever expected. One island is a remote barrier island. It's about 10 miles of Mississippi's coast. On this island, there's no bridge. You get there by boat. There is absolutely no bridge. You have shallow, the water around it changes fast. You have shallow areas. You have sudden drop-offs. You have also what I term to be high currents. They also have channels where water moves between the Mississippi Sound and the Gulf. Now, as we've heard, on July 4th, the area was packed. Witnesses described hundreds, maybe thousands of people arriving by the boat for the holiday. We had families, we had teenagers, okay? We had young adults, we had grown adults, we had people anchored near the shore. They stepped into waist-deep water and walked around the island. Now, according to GPS records, the boat carrying Nolan and his friend left a private dock in the Ocean Spring area around 9:56 that morning. They were on island around 11:14. Nolan's friend Warren Hudson later said that about 24 friends traveled in 3 boats. As the day went on, their group connected and even more people came in. Phones were reportedly left on the boat because everyone was surrounded by salt water. That detail would later become one of the most debatable parts of this case. But in the moment, according to Nolan's friend, it felt normal. They were at a crowded island celebration, okay? They were drinking, they were socializing, they were doing all sorts. They were enjoying the day. Nothing looked like a warning that Nolan would never make it home. Everything was going on smoothly. Then at some point during that celebration, Nolan met a young girl. His friend says that he seemed interested in this young girl. Now, Tristan Shepard, another friend that was there on that day, later said Nolan seemed to be genuinely into her. He seemed to genuinely like her, even though they had only met on that day. So Warren Hudson said he saw Nolan with her around 3 p.m. He described them as physically close. He said he and Nolan even joked about it. Now, according to Warren, that was one of the last times that he saw his friend before the group started getting ready to leave. But here's what the story still, where we begin to split hairs. Warren claimed that their boat had a problem. He said he and other friends repeatedly told Nolan to get on board. Now, according to Warren, Nolan refused. Warren says Nolan told them he planned to stay on the island and come back with someone else. But Nolan's family says that the young man gave the young woman gave a different impression. According to the family's attorney, she reportedly believed Nolan was going back with his original boat. Nolan's mother later said the woman contacted her and described their encounter as brief, almost like a simple greeting and goodbye. Now, that does not match the friend's picture of Nolan deliberately staying behind to spend more time with her. Now, let me be clear. The young woman has not been accused of a crime, but we need to take her accounts into note. Because our account matters. She may have been one of the last people to see Nolan before he disappeared. Okay? Did Nolan choose to stay with her? We don't know. Did he think he was going back to his original boat? Did he arrange to leave with someone else? We don't know. Or was there a misunderstanding in the chaos of a crowded, island? These questions all remain unanswered. Authorities initially said that Nolan was last seen around 3 p.m. According to them, Warren Hudson has also used that 3 p.m. window when he was describing Nolan with the young woman. But another friend, Javon Williams, said he saw Nolan sometime after 4 p.m. Warren also described asking Nolan to board the boat when the mechanical emergency happened around 4:30. Now, these accounts may not be impossible to reconcile. Okay, people don't always remember times when a day turns into a stressful one, but in a passing investigation, an hour can matter a whole lot. Now, the question is, who saw Nolan last? Where exactly was he standing? What was his physical condition? How much did he have to drink? Was he alone? All these are questions we all need to be asking. Did anyone see him after the original group left? And most importantly, did anyone actually see Nolan enter the water? Right now, the public does not have definitive answers. Nobody has answers. Everybody is still asking questions. But then, around 4 p.m., someone on the group's boat called C2, a private marine assistant company, the caller said the boat's bilge pump had stopped working. The vessel was taking on water. Now, the teenager on the call sounded concerned and asked for help right away. He also sounded drunk. During that call, the dispatcher asked if everyone on board was in good health, and the caller said yes. Even though it took him a lot of time to articulate his speech, he said about 7 people were on the boat. That line said everyone is on board. That line has gotten a lot of attention online. Some people believe it means Nolan may be on the boat may have been on the boat during the call, but that is still not established. Now, the caller may simply have meant that everyone who was supposed to be on that boat at the moment was accounted for. Without a confirmed passenger list, the statement cannot prove whether Nolan was there or not. The boat's owner eventually told Cito they no longer needed help because another vessel was assisting them. GP records confirmed the troubled boat left on island around 4:31 p.m. It was assisted or towed for part of the trip, then resumed normal operation. It entered the Fort Bow around 5:52. It returned to its original deck shortly after 6 p.m. At 7:19 that same evening, it was removed from the water and taken to its owner's residence. So yes, the boat emergency was real. Well, GPS data supports that part of the friend's account, but a mechanical failure does not explain what happened to Nolan after they left. Oh, let's talk about Nolan's phone. Nolan's phone returned to the mainland, but Nolan did not. His friends say this was not suspicious. The parents are like, how would my son's phone be with you and my son did not come back? They say a lot of people left their phones on the boat to protect them from salt water. Tristan Shepard claimed Nolan put his phone on the boat's dashboard next to about 15 other phones, right? Warren Hudson later said he did not know Nolan's password. He said he never searched the phone. He said he never deleted anything. Now, according to Warren, the phone was simply moved from the boat into a vehicle. He said later that night, the mother of another friend arrived and asked for Nolan's phone. Warren said it was handed over without a fight. But Nolan's parents experienced that moment very differently. Kristen said that when she realized Nolan was missing, she checked his location. His Life 360 information showed that his phone had returned to the mainland. So she could find his phone, but she could not find her son. And after getting the device back, Christine and her sister looked through this phone. She said they found no photographs or Snapchat videos from the July 14th celebration, which felt strange to her. It felt strange because Norman normally documented his life. Now, the missing content made her wonder if something had been deleted. But here is where we have to stay disciplined. Okay? She suspected. Suspicion is not at this time. No publicly released forensic report confirms that anyone deleted anything from Nolan's phone. Warren and other friends denied touching or accessing his phone. Now, the family investigators and law enforcement have agreed to examine the phone together. That examination may answer critical questions. Critical questions like, was any content deleted? Was the phone, touched? When was the phone used? Which accounts were accessed? Who communicated with Nolan before he disappeared? And what does the original, okay, let me say it this way. What does digital trail show about his final hours? The phone may end up being one or the most important witness in this entire case. Now, after returning to the mainland, Nolan's friend believed he had found another ride. But as the night went on, people started realizing no one had heard from him. Warren says he contacted several friends. Then he called Nolan's mother around 11:07 p.m. He also contacted the Coast Guard. Hold that there. The Coast Guard later confirmed receiving a call from one of Nolan's friends around 11 p.m. But they said the information given at the time did not require Coast Guard assistance. They have not publicly released the full details of the conversation. Now, at around 11:45 p.m., Kristen contacted the Mississippi Department of Marine Resources and reported her son missing. She was directed to the Jackson County Sheriff's Office. Kristen said there was some back and forth between the agencies because jurisdiction was unclear. Now, on island is federal land. The surrounding water and the main land involves local, state, and federal authorities. Nolan's parents eventually met a deputy in McDonald's parking lot and shared what they knew. At that point, investigators were being told that Nolan had voluntarily stayed on the island with a young woman and may have returned on a different boat. Because his phone was already back on the land, authorities first believed he might simply be unable to contact his family. But Nolan's parents did not believe he would stay missing without finding a way to reach them. By morning, their fear was growing. And if you are listening as a mother, you already understand that feeling in your body, that intuition that, something is wrong. Then the Nolan begins. On early July 5th, Nolan's parents and his former football coach went to On Island by the boat. They were not sitting still at home waiting for updates. They were out there looking for him. Around 8 a.m., the Mississippi Department of Marine Resources launched a patrol vessel. Then multiple agencies eventually joined in. The Jackson County Sheriff's Office, the Coast Guard, the National Service, all of them came rushing in. The fire department, the wildlife officials, everyone joined in. The Civil Air Patrol people, who else can I remember? United Cajun Navy, even private citizens joined to look for Nolan. Aircraft searched from above, searched the shoreline and the water. Sonar was used around the northwestern part of the island. MDMR tried to launch drones, but one had a software problem. Another flight ended after a swollen battery separated in the extreme heat. Anyways, at about 12:26 p.m., the Coast Guard received an official request for help from the sheriff's office. A marine alert went out. A helicopter was deployed. At 12:31, authorities publicly announced that Nolan was missing. The search continued into the evening. Poor weather disrupted some sonar work, and Nolan was still nowhere to be found. So search continued. On Monday, July 6th, search crew went back out. At around 8:45 in the morning, a National Park Service ranger found a body near the northwestern tip of On Island. Dental records later confirmed it was Nolan Wells. The most reliable public reporting says Nolan was found face down in water wearing blue swim trunks. Early reports say he was fully clothed. That language made people wonder if someone had dressed him or moved his body. Now, that claim also was later corrected. United Kajun Navy officials clarified that Nolan was wearing only his swim trunks. Oh my God. One official had used the word clothed to mean he was not naked. And the correction matters because words can completely change public perception, especially in an unresolved passing investigation like this one. By early afternoon, Nolan's mother publicly confirmed that her son had been found. The family's search had ended, but their fight for answers had only begun. On July 7th, the Mississippi State Medical Examiner conducted Nolan's first autopsy. The official cause of passing and toxicology reports or results have not been released publicly. Authorities initially suggested drowning was the most likely explanation. They said there was no obvious signs of foul play. For Nolan's family, that conclusion felt too fast. Christine said the sheriff told her shortly after the body was recovered that he believed the passing was accidental. And her concerns make sense. How can accidental drowning be treated as the likely answer before autopsy, before toxicology, before digital evidence, before full evidence, full interviews are completed? Okay, so the sheriff's office said investigation is still and all of that. But for Nolan's parents, that early statement created a story that they feared could shape the whole case. And that is why they retained civil rights attorney Ben Crump. And that is why they ordered a second autopsy. Okay, now let's talk about the independent autopsy. The second autopsy was done in Washington, D.C. by forensic pathologist Dr. Roger Mitchell. The preliminary findings were announced on July 22nd, and the conclusion was clear. But one thing, the available evidence was not enough to determine how Nolan passed. Cause of passing undetermined pending fuller or further investigation. Manner of passing, accident, natural, suicide, or homicide, was also undetermined. The report could not even establish Nolan's exact date of passing. The examination found no skin laceration, no skull fractures, no other fractures, no major deep tissue injuries. Now, that weakens claims that Nolan suffered an obvious severe beating, but it still does not explain how he entered the water. The pathologist also noted an area of red discoloration in the tissue at the back of Nolan's head. He says it was about 12 by 8 inches. Now, the family's attorney called it significant, but another forensic pathologist explained that discoloration in a decomposed body does not automatically prove trauma. He says it could be an injury. It could also be related to decomposition or the positioning of the body. Without more evidence, that mark cannot responsibly be called proof of an attack. Before the independent exam, the Mississippi medical examiner had removed and retained internal organs and part of Nolan's throat. Now, online, that quickly became, missing organ. Everybody was shouting missing. Some people said it like proof that authorities were hiding something. But removing organs and tissues during an autopsy is forensic practice, according to what I've heard. A medical examiner may take tissue for toxicology, microscopic examination, or for testing. That fact alone is not proof of misconduct. Still, it's created a real limitation for the second pathologist. Now, without direct access to the throat or other internal structures, the doctor could not independently determine whether there was an injury inside of Nolan's neck, whether water was present in his airways, whether the lungs showed findings consistent with drowning, where it could not establish whether there was an internal bleeding around the brain. What remained in his stomach as well could not be established. It could not establish what the toxicology may reveal. Now, the independent autopsy did not run separate toxicology testing. That means the state's photograph, tissue samples, and all of that findings are still critical. Until those findings are reviewed, the second pathologist cannot rule drowning in and cannot rule foul play. Okay? So, yes, again, undetermined. As the case went national, social media rushed in to fill the silence. A video circulated online where someone could be heard demanding the return of his phone. Give me my phone. Nolan's attorney initially suggested the voice might be Nolan's and the recording could show an altercation. But Tristan Shepard later said it was his voice, not Nolan's. Authorities have asked for original unedited photos and videos from Horn Island, especially anything showing an argument or unusual. But law enforcement has not publicly confirmed that Nolan was in a fight. Another widely shared photos appeared to show Nolan and his friend at a pool party. Friends later explained that the photo was from June 27, not July 4th. Ben Crumb acknowledged that his team had reposted some content before. Let me say that again. Ben Crumb acknowledged that his team had reposted some content to encourage witnesses to come forward. Now, reposting does not mean the material had been authenticated. This is where we have to be careful. A viral post is not an evidence, cannot serve as an evidence. A confident narrator is not a witness. An unedited clip is not a full timeline. So if we truly want justice for Nolan, misinformation does not help. It only confuses people. It can even damage innocent people. And it makes it harder for investigators to separate what real evidence is from the online noise. Let's look at what Nolan's friend says, or his friends are saying. Warren Hudson says Nolan deliberately stayed on the island. He said Nolan looked physically fine. He says Nolan was spending time with a young lady. He says Nolan declined repeated requests for him to get on the boat. Warren says he questions himself every night now. He says he struggles with the decision to leave. He also denies accessing Nolan's phone or deleting anything for that matter. Okay? And what else? Shepard said leaving phones on the boat was normal. He says Nolan was not the person shouting in the viral confrontation video. He maintains that the group loved Nolan and did not harm him. But Javon Williams has expressed doubt about the idea that Nolan would stay behind. Javon says that even though he saw Nolan speaking with a woman staying on the island while his friends left, would have been out of character for him. Now that detail matters a lot. Even Nolan's friend did not appear to interpret his intentions the exact same way. That does not prove that anyone is lying, but it just questions their friendship. People may witness the same day and remember it differently. But those differences need to be examined, not brushed aside. Now, there are facts that make accidental drowning plausible. The water around Horn Island can be very rough and unpredictable. Witnesses described strong currents on that particular day. Nolan had reportedly been drinking. He was wearing swim trunks and spending time in the water. Now drinking, spending time in the water. His body was found near the area where he was last seen. The independent autopsy found no fractures or obvious severe injuries. And experienced boaters have warned that even a strong swimmer can be overpowered by sudden currents. Nolan was an athlete, yes. He reportedly knew how to swim, yes. But knowing how to swim does not make anyone invisible, especially when alcohol is involved, especially when you are exhausted, especially when the water is changing depths and the water is moving very fast. You see, all of that combination can end someone's life. So accidentally drowning is a reasonable possibility, but a possibility is still not a final conclusion. Okay, now let's look at why foul play has not been ruled. The pathologist, the independent pathologist, could not determine Nolan's condition before he entered the water. We do not know if he was fully conscious before entering that water. We do not know if he fell, if he was injured, or if he became incapacitated while in the water. We do not know if he entered the water on his own. We do not know if anyone was with him. We still do not have the official toxicology findings. Okay? And we do not have a publicly verified explanation for the movement of his phone, his vehicle, and keys. We do not have one consistent, verified final sighting. These unanswered questions mean foul play cannot be ruled out, but they also do not prove that Nolan was MURDERED, if you know what I mean. There is currently no publicly released evidence establishing that his friends assaulted him, forced him into the water, or deliberately caused his passing. There is also no publicly released evidence proving that his passing was racially motivated. Nolan was a young black man in Mississippi. His family's concerns about racial bias cannot also be dismissed, not with America's history. But history should push investigators to be much more thorough. I cannot replace evidence in this specific case. So the responsible position is not this was definitely an M, and it is not this was obviously an accident. The responsible position is we do not know yet. And Nola's family deserves an investigation strong enough to produce an answer that can help or that can uphold real scrutiny. Nolan's family deserves an investigation that is strong enough to produce an answer that can uphold under real scrutiny. Okay? That is my take. Now, the Jackson County Sheriff's Office to lead the investigation. By mid-July, investigators say they had interviewed over 60 witnesses, including the 3 friends who traveled to On Island with Nolan. The FBI has assisted with digital evidence and has looked into threats directed at people connected to the case. FBI's involvement does not automatically mean the agency has classified Nolan's passing as homicide or civil rights crime. The completed investigation is expected to be presented to a Jackson County grand jury. The district attorney explained that nearly every non-natural passing in the county goes to a grand jury. So grand jury review does not mean prosecutors have already decided a crime occurred. Grand jury will look at the evidence and decide whether there is enough legal justification for criminal charges. The official state autopsy is expected to stay confidential until that review. Now, as of July 27, no one has been arrested, no charges have been filed, no official cause of passing has been announced in this case. No official manner of passing has been announced, and no grand jury date has been made public. What else? Yeah, so that's where we are at as of July 27th, which is yesterday. Now, Nolan's family has retained attorney Ben Kropp and Eric Hertz. The NAACP called for a thorough, transparent investigation involving local, state, and federal authorities. Reverend Al Sharpton, filmmaker Tyler Perry, and former NFL player Colin Kaepernick, and Hall of Famer Terrell Owens have supported the family. Colin Kaepernick reportedly paid for the independent autopsy. Tyler Perry paid for Nolan's funeral. Sharpton and Perry offered a combined $100,000 reward for information leading to an arrest and conviction. Aaron Owens added another $25,000, bringing the reward to $125,000. Nolan's funeral was held on July 20th at Center Pointed Church in Ocean Spring. His mother thanked God for the 18 years she has had with her son. His parents spoke about his kindness, his faith, and the love that he had given to other people. Hundreds of people have gathered in Ocean Springs and outside of the Jackson County Courthouse, and they are demanding answers. Now, behind the cameras, the demonstrations is a mother who still does not know exactly how her son died. And that pain should never get lost in all of the noise. Now, why does this story matter? This story matters because when young people travel together, there is an unspoken expectation of care. You do not have control over another adult, but if you live together, there should be a clear plan for how everyone gets back. You confirm who is changing boats. You make sure that the person actually has another safe boat. Safe boat, that's the word. You do not assume. You do not leave someone without a phone and just hope everything works out. That does not mean Nolan's friends caused his passing, but it does show a serious breakdown in group safety. Somewhere between the island, the boat emergency, and the return to the mainland, certainty got replaced with assumptions. One person assumed Nolan would get another ride. Another person believed he would return with the original group. His parents assumed that he was safe with his friends. Authorities first assumed that he may have already returned to the mainland. And while everybody is assuming Nolan was missing. So assumptions, we should be very careful about assumptions. Now, here is what we can responsibly say. It is a fact that Nolan traveled to Horn Island with his friends. It is a fact that he did not return on the same boat. Now, I'm not very sure of that fact, okay? But it is a fact that his phone returned without him. It is a fact that the boat had mechanical problems. It is a fact that there are differences in the public's account of Nolan's final hours. It is a fact that his body was found near Horn Island 2 days later. It is also a fact that the independent autopsy could not determine his cause or manner of passing. No one has been charged. That is a fact as well. It is an allegation, not an established fact, that someone deleted information from his phone. It is an allegation, not an established fact, that Nolan was involved in a fight. It is an allegation, not an established fact, that he was forced into the water. It is also not established that he accidentally drowned. And there is currently no public evidence proving that his passing was racially motivated ending. Now, justice requires us to hold space for every reasonable possibility without turning suspicion into a conviction. Now, let's decode what sits under this story. First, it's not the same as accusation. We can ask why Nolan was left without accusing his friends of the M word. Okay, we can question the investigation without deciding that every officer is part of a cover-up. We can demand answers without inventing facts that do not exist. Number two, your instinct deserves attention, but they also still need evidence. Nolan parents knew their son. When they said the story did not sound like him, that concern deserved to be documented and investigated. A mother's intuition is not courtroom evidence, okay? But it can point investigators towards questions that might otherwise be missed. Number three, silence creates a space that misinformation will fill. Again, when the family gets little information, the internet will write its own stories. And that is why transparency matters. Not because the public is entitled to every confidential detail during an investigation, no, but because communication builds trust every time. Now, number four, being an adult does not mean you no longer need a safety plan. Nolan was 18. Legally, he was an adult, but to me, he was still a child because 18 is still young. At that age, many people are still learning how to navigate alcohol, relationship, group pressure, and risk without a parent standing right there. Young adults need freedom, yes, but they also need practical safety habits. So the great lesson here is if you go together, please return together. If your teenagers or young adult is traveling or are traveling with friends, teach them this simple rule. If you arrive together, you leave together, unless the change of plan is carefully and clearly confirmed, not assumed, but confirmed. If someone is changing ride, know the driver's name, see the boat or vehicle that they are using, confirm that the particular driver agrees to carry him. Because another thing we are not even talking about is, what if the boat he decided to follow refused him entering? There was no other boat to go with, and he was left deserted on that island. Let's think about that. Okay? We should also always make sure that the person has their phone. Always locations when possible. Set a specific check-in time always. And if someone cannot be located, please raise alarm early. It may feel like you are being overly cautious, but safety can look unnecessary until the moment it becomes life-saving. For parents, this is not a reminder to create communication without making your children afraid to tell you the truth. If they believe they will be punished for admitting they are drunk or changed plans or made a mistake, they may hide important information during an emergency. Your child needs to know that no matter what situation they are in, call me. No matter what is going on, tell me the truth. They need to know that we will deal with the consequences after you are safe. Now, I want to give you some practical steps. Before the next beach trip, boat party or group holiday, sit down with your child or your young adult and agree on these steps. 1, you need to create a return plan. Know who is responsible for transportation both ways. Number 2, establish a buddy system. No one should disappear from the group without telling or directly telling at least one trusted person. Number 3, protect the phone, but keep communication open. Keep communication available. Use waterproof phone cases or bags. If phones must stay on a boat, at least one person should carry a working waterproof device. Number 4, share identifying information. Know the boat registration, the launch location, the driver, the destination, and the expected return time. Don't mix heavy drinking with open water. That is number 5. Even experienced swimmers can become disoriented or physically overwhelmed. Number 6, please don't accept "I think he left with someone else." Find out who. Make sure changes are confirmed. Find out who. Find out when. Find out how. Number 7, please report concerns immediately. You do not need to wait 24 hours to report a missing person. And finally, please teach your parents, or teach your children that caring for a friend sometimes means being temporarily unpopular. It may mean insisting they live with the group. It may mean calling a parent and saying, "Hey, your child has refused to come back with us." It may mean taking the keys and taking charge. It may mean refusing to leave until a safe plan is confirmed. Real friendship is not just having fun together. Real friendship includes responsibility. And if there's one thing I want you to remember from Nolan's story, it is this: never ever allow an assumption to become your safety plan. Do not assume someone has another ride. Do not assume someone is sober enough to swim or to drive. Do not assume another person is watching them. Do not assume silence means everything is fine. You need to ask questions. You need to confirm answers, and you need to check again. This extra 5 minutes could change everything. Those extra 5 minutes where you ask, when you confirm, when you check again, they could change everything. Nolan Wells left home as a young man with a future. He returned as the center of a mystery his family never asked to carry. Maybe the official evidence will ultimately show that Nolan drowned in a terrible accident. Maybe investigators will discover that something happened before he entered the water. At this moment, we do not know. And saying we do not know is not witness. It is what it is. It is honesty. The goal should not be to force this tragedy into the theory that best matches our fears, our politics, or our personal experiences. The goal should be the truth, a truth supported by autopsy, a truth supported by the phone, a truth supported by GPS data, original videos, credible witness accounts, toxicology, a truth strong enough to give Nolan's parents the answers that they deserve. Because a boat came back, a phone came back, Nolan's keys came back, but Nolan not. And until the evidence explains why the questions must continue. Again, until the evidence explains why, then the questions must continue. If this story moved you, share this video and call for a complete evidence-based investigation. But please share responsibly. Do not harass Nolan's parents, his friends, the young woman from the island, or anyone connected to this case. Do not circulate unverified photographs. Do not accuse people who have not been charged. Justice is not achieved by replacing one injustice with another. In the comment, tell me, what safety rule do you believe every parent should teach a teenager before a group trip? And what question in Nolan's case do you believe investigators must urgently or most urgently need to answer? Drop a yes if this helped you slow down and think more carefully about the differences between evidence and noise. Subscribe to Yes Life Coaching, Woman Stand in Your Power, where we take the stories happening around us and uncover the lessons that can protect, strengthen, and empower us. If this story has brought up fear, grief, or any other thing, or difficulty in you trusting your voice, please go and have therapy. Next time, protect your peace. Trust your voice, verify what you hear, and always, as usual, always stand in your power. I will see you in the next one. Always, always stand in your power. In memory of Nolan Xavier Wells, this case remains under investigation. I'll see you in the next one, people. Bye.
Walk in your truth until next time. Stand in your power.